All right. Hey guys. So we are here live to talk about the dark side of the stage. So this is our topic this time, just to kind of talk about the not so glamorous sides of competing, because it's not all glitz and glam when it comes to everything. There's actually a lot of, obviously, the hard work that goes into it, but there are other things that we can talk about so you feel better prepared when you're going to compete your first show, or maybe you're thinking about competing and you're just not really sure if it's for you, and also to prepare yourself for after you do your first show, or any show, I should say, what to do afterwards. So some of the things that we may talk about are, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, perfectionism when it comes to things, and also post-show blues. So Stephanie, do you have anything that you want to start with?
I think body dysphoria would be a good start.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to body dysphoria, I feel like it often starts before the athletes even start prep, not all the time, but you do see quite a few that they want to get ready for a show per se, or they think they do, but it's all just because they have issues with the way that they see themselves, so they think they might be overweight. They're really not overweight. So they think that dieting down, getting ready for a show per se is going to help them overcome that issue, when in fact it could possibly make it worse if you don't address it firsthand.
Yes. And that's the hard thing, because we see ourselves every day, right? So a lot of the times how we perceive ourselves is not how others perceive ourselves, or each other, I should say. And so when it comes to how we view ourselves, it can be kind of a slippery slope sometimes for some people if they're wanting to compete just to diet down to get skinnier. That's not the ultimate goal, right? So, if you're wanting to compete, it's not about who's the skinniest on stage. There is, a whole process that you have to go through. And so I want to say there's not always a right or wrong reason to compete, but there are certain things that you should probably avoid when it comes to competing. And that's one of them, is not to compete just to get super skinny and lean, because ideally it's not very healthy to stay stage lean anyways. It's a very temporary thing. So body dysmorphia, and that kind of leads into eating disorders too, of course. So with that being said, Coach Holly is actually on the call too. Do you have anything you want to add for body dysmorphia?
Yes, I'd like to point out something, and it's an instance. I'm going to use a close friend of mine. At one point in time, earlier in our friendship, she was dating an individual, and she started out in this relationship happy with her body. And, within a year or so, it was suddenly her chest wasn't big enough. Her butt wasn't round enough. And if you ask me, she had a cute tush, nothing wrong with her. She had a cute little bubble butt. Sometimes people go into competing as a way to fix themselves or fix what they think will make their partner happy. And I want to say that while it is admirable to want to change your body because it would make you happy and make you feel good, if you're doing it for any reason outside of that, if someone else is pressuring you to do things you don't want to do, or you feel this pressure to appease somebody by looking a certain way, and this has completely separate from what you and your coach discuss, right? That's a different perspective, right? They're pushing you to get towards the stage because you've set this goal. But if there's someone in their life that, you basically are being told you're not good enough because you don't have this, you don't have that, and you decide that you're going to step into this venue as a way to fix those things, that can be a recipe for a disaster later on. And it can lead to body dysmorphia or huge levels of stress, right? Because there are some people, and sometimes including ourselves, where no matter what we do, they're not going to be happy, or we're not going to be happy. And that comes from a different place, because that's something that needs to be worked on in here and in here. And until this and this align with your personal goals and what you feel like you would like to accomplish, your body may choose to fight you the whole way there. And it can be just such a vicious cycle. And I want to say, if you ever find yourself in such a place as this, be open and honest with the support system that you have, whether it be friends or family members. If you feel comfortable, be open and honest with your coach. And when in doubt, seek the help of a professional, whether that be your primary care physician, a mental health professional, whatever you feel like you need in that moment to support you and help you work through those things, rather than getting in that, vicious cycle of it's never going to be good enough or it's never going to be enough, because that can be very defeating. I think somebody, Elle, you had your hand raised?
Yes. Do you have a question or anything you wanted to add? No. If you have any questions by any means at any time, you can actually add those in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Either way. But yeah, Holly, I totally agree. It is a slippery slope. And, the same thing goes for not even just getting ready for the stage. Body dysmorphia can also be on the other end of things, of trying to build as well, and kind of feeling like I'm never going to have the shape I need, or the roundness, or how full I need to be, that kind of thing, and feeling like whether or not you're ready. And so that's why obviously having a coach and a second pair of eyes can be very helpful, so that one, you're getting an outside perspective. And it's not just you hounding yourself to try and get ready for the stage and second guessing everything and all the work that you have been putting in. Because obviously your coach is going to be able to hopefully be honest with you and tell you whether or not you are on the right track for your goals. So the other thing, that kind of plays into is eating disorders. I know it's not a lovely topic, but when it does come to competing, along the lines of like wanting to get lean enough, if you're trying to starve yourself continually and not fueling yourself properly, eating disorders can happen, and trying to constantly be in a state of trying to lose without reverse dieting too, because, obviously we can't diet 24/7 to continually to get lean, because that's going to affect our mentality. It's going to affect our hormones. It's going to affect, how we feel about ourselves overall. And while it can be scary to take and gain some weight back, or even to reverse diet and look a little bit different than stage lean, it is absolutely necessary for your overall health. So anything you want to add, Stephanie?
Yeah, I feel like that's a really important thing to address, because a lot of athletes, they fall in love with they fall in love with their show body, and then they're like, well, coming out of the show, I want to reverse, but I don't want to gain 10 pounds. Well, it doesn't work like that. Like, I mean, if you want to grow, which mostly they want to because they want to win, right? So if they want to grow, you have to gain some weight. You don't have to go 20, 30, 40 pounds, but at least 10 pounds, because you have to put some mass on, and, they don't really understand the concept that it's really not healthy to be lean 24/7, and it's a temporary thing, but they get so fixated on their body that they don't ever want to go back to where they started when they first started prep, and so I think it's an important thing for people to understand that there has to be some give and take with, coming out of a show and doing it right and fueling your body so you can, keep hormones on track, not get sick, stay healthy if you want to still compete and grow, of course. So it's like there's all these things that factor into it, but they put the blinders on, and they refuse to see the whole truth, you know what I mean? So
I'm going to piggyback off you, Steph. I think a lot of times we're so bent on that last 12 to 20 weeks prior to our show that we fail to see what's coming on the other side, because the goal is just to get to the show, right? The goal is to get to the stage, and you're like, at some point, I'll worry about that later. I don't know what's going to happen when I step off that stage, other than I might want XYZ food that I've been craving, but I really haven't planned for the day after. Just like it took you 12 to 20 weeks to taper down, it's going to take 12 to 20 weeks to start gradually coming back up, because some of you, not all of you, but most, as you're going towards your show, right, your cardio is increasing. Well, you're going to need to reverse that coming out of the show. So we're going to start tapering that back down, right? Because we use cardio as kind of like our last ditch effort need be. So we can't sustain high amounts of cardio while we're trying to build muscle on the back end. And this is regardless of whether you want to compete again or not. If you never plan to do another show in your life, I highly, highly recommend you still have an exit plan, because you're going to need to give your body time to adjust to gradually increasing those calories back up, gradually dialing that cardio and that training back down. And about 12 to 20 weeks out, your coach may come to you and say, you know what, we're in a good space right here. I think we've hit your maintenance calories. Your body seems to be taking them up. You've put a little bit of weight back on, which is a good thing, because we need to grow and build, right? And if we're in these tiny, tiny, lean bodies, where do you grow from there? You've gotten as lean as you can. It's not sustainable. We may like it, we may love it, but it's not sustainable long term. So we got to give ourselves room to grow, and that's going to need us to kind of unlock that little cage a little bit. I would say anybody here who's competed before, we all have like our lean clothing, and then usually the next size up clothing. And if depending if you're going for glutes and quads, you have another size in addition to that. So vacuum seal bags are a treasure. You just, Linda's laughing at me. Like, you just have, like, I can swing anywhere from a size small bottom to a size large. And that's no lie. I've got a badonk. And in grow season, it grows. And in grow season, my quads get thicker. And I have a tendency, no lie, to rip the crotch out of every pair of leggings I try to hold on to in size medium if I just don't bless myself and say, you know what, girl? It's grow season. It is what it is. Your badonk's gotten a little big. Make peace with it. It's just a label. It's just a label inside that tag. It does not define you as a person. It does not define your self-worth. It is a label. And with the multitude of manufacturers these days, a small for one company is a medium for another. So do not get bent on that label. You should be excited on that back end when those glutes get a little bit bigger and that bicep gets a little bit bigger. Maybe you can get a little girth to your neck. That's okay. That's okay. Does your favorite necklace still fit? All right. That's all that matters. Do your earrings still fit? That's all that matters. They're one size fits all. So embrace those changes, but definitely have an exit plan. Like Sarah and Steph said, like, so many times we see people that they compete and the next day it is like a buffet galore, can't stay out of their favorite snacks. And I'm going to say that not everybody coming out looks like this, but the people who have gone into it with like a very reduced amount of time to prep, where they're almost like crash prepping, they've become so restrictive that it's like the gates open the next day. And sometimes we see it on the page. People are like, hey, I've put like 15 pounds back on really rapidly. Well, your hormones are all over the place. Your body isn't sure how to break down the foods that you really haven't been eating the last couple weeks. So it's trying to adjust. Your sleep schedule's probably whacked. You're probably dehydrated because you're not pushing yourself with water the way you did before. There are so many factors. And then all of a sudden, we get that day where our cycle comes and we get that like little poofy poof in the front. And you're just like, oh, I hate myself. No. Right? I mean, let's think about it. You can be full of up anywhere from 5 to 10 pounds of poo for needing to take a good poo. So there's that. Then there's the water factor. Are you drinking enough? Not drinking enough? Is it hot where you are? Are you changing climates? Have you traveled recently? All fluctuation. That scale is meant to look like a heart monitor from day to day, from week to week. It will never be just this. It will never be just this. That's the beauty of being a female. You get that cycle, it's going to wreak havoc. You have something important to show up in and you got to wear white, it's going to show up. That's what it does when it does the scale too. When it's important, you want to take pictures, you're going to get a pimple. That's just how your body works. But having that exit plan will help you navigate the emotions that go along with that and make you feel like you have a sense of control versus being totally out of control on the opposite end, because that can be really hard to rein back in. You'll see people that are like, I did a show. It was a horrible experience on the back end. I didn't have an exit plan. My coach never addressed it with me. I'm going to tell you now, no matter where you are with your coach, address it now. Ask questions. You don't even have to have set a date yet. Hey, I was curious. I was in this discussion the other night and they talked about an exit plan. When I decide to compete, what might that look like? Start planning now. It's never too early to plan, because no different than you had to plan in your mind to get to that show all these weeks and months. It's good to know what's happening on the back end.
Yeah, I agree. And it's often very overlooked. I know my first show, I didn't have a plan and I paid dearly for it. And I'm sure Stephanie probably has some experience with that as well, whether that's, herself or clients that she's had. But yeah, like if you don't have an exit plan, it's really hard post show, because one, you have depleted yourself so much from a lot of things that you haven't had. And you're like, oh, I can have these now. But at the same time, your body doesn't know how to process a lot of those things. You're going through a lot of different emotions at that time, because you also just don't have the goal of the stage at the moment either. And so you don't have, that goal per se. So a lot of the times I do tell clients, like, regardless if you do want to compete again or not, make sure that you have a goal either way. If you don't want to decide you don't want to compete again, that's fine. But your goal should be at that time to come back up to a healthy maintenance so that you can live a healthier lifestyle without, obviously overdoing it, things like that. Because you don't want to go completely back to where you were half the time, right? A lot of us started out being, not as healthy, right? But we want to get back to at least a healthier, balanced lifestyle. So for a lot of people, work with your coach until you can achieve that, even if you don't plan on competing again. And maybe you won't know right away. That's fine. I didn't know if I wanted to compete again after my first show, but after the first show, I was like, okay, when's the next one? I was like, I'm ready. But that adrenaline, obviously was a part of that. But afterwards, it took me, several months to get readjusted to everything again and get back into like a good solid routine. And that takes time. So being honest with your coach, having honest conversations, and, being honest if you mess up. Honestly, if you fall off track, it's fine. It's going to happen. All of us do it, especially post show, because you're like, oh, I can go out and have this and that. And the temptations are high, right? So, just own up to it. Just like, okay, I did this. What can I do to get back on track? Or what small goals can I make every single week to get back to a healthier lifestyle? And that could be just as simple as like, let me make sure I'm drinking my water every day. Let me make sure I'm getting my workouts in. If nothing else, I'm at least doing something, right? So that's all I will say about that. But with that being said, we can kind of go into post-show blues. This typically happens because you've worked so hard for the stage, and then you're like, now what, right? You don't have that next goal just yet. And it's kind of like you're in limbo. You've put all of your focus and your blinders on, like Stephanie was saying, for this show. And so now what do you do after the show, right? A lot of people will kind of fall into like almost like a little bit of a depression because they don't have this goal in mind. And they're really hard on themselves too, because they're like, well, I'm gaining and I can't control my cravings, and all these things kind of pile up. And then you're just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know what to do, right? So along with that comes, I have some recommendations where, just setting really small goals, talking to your coach, of course. I've even recommended to people to journal, just like reconnect with themselves a little bit, like go back and start doing some of the things that you enjoyed before you got into the really deep parts of competing, because you need to have some normalcy in your life again, and kind of just reconnect with who you were, outside of being an athlete, if you will. Anything you want to add, Stephanie?
Yeah. I mean, the post-show blues, they can hit hard. And it's something that you least expect because you go in amped up and you've been working your butt off for this show probably for maybe a few years, or maybe it was 6 months. It doesn't matter. But whatever it is, it's hard work. And I mean, you give up family time, or like family outings with friends. You give up a lot of things for people, and they don't really understand why, right? Why would you put yourself through this whole thing? And then you hop on stage, and then maybe it doesn't go the way you wanted it to go, or the way that you saw it would go in your head. And so when you come off that stage, now you're like, what's the plan? Like, well, I need to grow, so I can't go hop into another show right away. So what am I supposed to do with myself for a full year or two, But I think it's important that when it comes down to that is just focus, like you said, pick small goals, whether it's day to day, week to week, whatever. But for me, what helps me is knowing that next year, I might take a full year off, but next year when I come back, I'm going to come back bigger and better. And that's going to be my main focus. I think I haven't really had these talks. I've had a few different coaches in my past, and I never really had these talks with them. They never warned me about them, and some of them won't, some of them might, I don't know. But I think it's an important thing for people to understand that, depression, it's going to hit you, and even during prep, it gets lonely. So you're going to go through those times where, if you don't have a huge support system, say like your family, friends, or whatever, you're going to want to get a support system through the bodybuilding community. And I feel like if you can talk to people that have had these specific situations happen, which probably 99% of the competitors do, and if they say they don't, they're lying. It doesn't have to be a bad case per se, but even the minimal amount of blues, will happen. And so if you can align yourself with those people in your community that understand, they can help you. They can walk you through it. They can, so I just, that's all I have to say, really. Just make a plan, focus on you can focus on what you just did, what you applied yourself to do, and commend yourself for that, because it's hard work. It doesn't matter what placement you take, really. In the end, you got up on the stage, which is the hardest thing to do, really, for a lot of people. So you should commend yourself for that. Have some thought about the whole process and everything that you just went through. And then if you want to compete again, and that's what's going to happen in the near future, then focus on that. Put your head down and just drive hard and do the best that you can do, So, yeah.
And I'm going to say on that back end plan, because those post-show blues do happen, and, you're not alone in feeling that way when it does. Like I said, Steph said, it's not something that's really talked about. You don't see that in anybody's highlight reels when they're telling you they got their pro card, but it does happen. It does. People, if you've ever planned like a big wedding, go through it then. There's lots of times in our lives where we've been leading up to like a big event, and then you just kind of feel sad because, again, you're like, oh, what next? I highly encourage you, again, while you're making that exit plan, set something that you're going to look forward to, something you really wanted to do that maybe you couldn't do during that year you were prepping or whatever. Set it for 3 months out, something else at 6 months out, and something else at 9 months out. And make sure that none of it has anything to do with competing or the gym. Make 3 dates on that calendar of 3 things you want to do. It could be things that like maybe you've been saving up for financially, something that you just told yourself you didn't have time for, because it will help immensely to have something new and exciting to look forward to. So during those moments where it might feel really, really rough, you can look ahead and be like, okay, I can focus here. If I can do nothing else today, I can focus on this because this is something that I was really hoping to do. So I just think it's a nice way to create that part of your exit plan. Again, regardless of competing or not, just to have those benchmarks of things. And by all means, it is lonely. This sport can be very lonely. We have huge communities with online forums, but they're not really people you're talking to every day or people that you necessarily know. Get your inner circle and find an inner circle you feel comfortable confiding in. Journal, your significant other, your best friend, your cat, your dog. Sit down and just talk about your feelings out loud. It doesn't have to be with anybody particular. Like I don't care if I'm crazy. I talk to my dog all the time. She's like my ride or die. But like I used to work remotely and we've spent many an hour talking. So, but just sometimes speaking those feelings out loud and holding space for them and speaking them into existence can be a huge help. It can feel freeing. For some people, it might be writing or recording. Just speaking them out loud and holding space and giving them a name can feel like 15 pounds are coming off your shoulders. If you feel like, there's someone not necessarily close to you that you could confide in yourself. Just give it a name, speak it out loud, write it down, record it. Any way just to release those emotions, highly recommend.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I want to say my last show, I definitely had to journal some more because I didn't really have a support system then. You know what I mean? So I didn't have the people that I could look to. I didn't have the community that we do now. That wasn't a thing the last time I competed. So I did a lot of journaling for myself because I didn't have anyone that was like very supportive of me in doing that. I actually had family members who were like, why is she wearing a bikini and posting that online type of thing? But regardless, you need to be able to be your biggest supporter, but also, be able to work through all of those emotions as well. That's the hardest thing. I know Stephanie just competed, so Stephanie has probably the closest thing right now, and she had reversed very recently, and now she's in her building phases. So I'm sure, Stephanie, you have a lot of insight when it comes to like how did you feel when you first got done with your last show?
For my last show, I mean, I'm driven, so I've competed a few other times, so it's not, to me, this one was probably the easiest prep, even though it was the longest prep. It wasn't as hard for me mentally or physically, really. And then coming off of it, it was pretty easy because my coach and I made a game plan, literally right there at the show, right after the show. Like, let's build, let's grow, and we're coming in hot next year.
Right.
So that was enough to just keep the fire lit underneath my feet. And I stayed healthy the whole time, so I didn't really have any struggles going on at all. So that made a big difference right there, because I feel like the last, like my first show and then my second show a year later, two different coaches. So the first show was like the first coach that I ever found. Didn't really do much research on her. I just knew her from when I had previously lived back in that town. And she helped me get ready for my show, but I wasn't ready. I shouldn't even have been on that stage. I should have been building for probably 3 years, but I didn't really know any different. And so coming off of that show, it was kind of depressing to say the least, just because like I felt like I was set up to fail, because she just kept telling me that I was looking good. And I was like, and I thought I looked good because compared to what my body was before, I was like, damn, I look good, right? But when you get on that stage or behind stage with all those competitors, it's like, it's a whole nother ball game, I was just like, I remember walking back there and I was like, oh, why am I back here? I don't belong here. This is ridiculous. Like, you got all these big shoulders and biceps, and I'm like this little tiny twig. And I'm like, how am I ready? You know? And so it was kind of like almost a big disappointment to me that somebody that you look up to, you pay all this stuff to basically get you ready, you know, and with all the knowledge that they have, that they don't give you this insight. I feel like this is a huge, important thing that people need to know, especially new competitors, you know, instead of finding out the hard way. And so that was kind of like, to me, I was just like, well, I just need to find a different coach, obviously, because that was not. And then the second one was fine, but I think I came out, I definitely wasn't happy with the way that I placed. So obviously hormones are raging and I'm just like angry and upset. And I binge ate for probably a couple weeks. I mean, it was just like, just a whole train wreck, you know? And, but in reality, I still needed to grow. I needed to build. Like, there was no way that still I shouldn't have been on that stage. I looked good. Yeah, I looked great, you know, but not compared to everybody else. You know, I still had a lot of room to grow. And so it's tough. But these last two shows this year, you know, because I've grown physically, I've grown mentally. I coach people, you know, for prep and stuff. So it's like, you're well aware of what to expect. Sometimes you don't really know what to expect, but you can prepare yourself for the expected. Does that make sense? So coming out of these last two shows this year, it was easy peasy, you know, compared to the last previous years that I competed. So I think with time and experience, I also think, you know, time and experience has a lot to do with it as well, as far as, you know, coming out of getting ready for a show or even coming out of a show and how, you know, you react to that. So, because I mean, I always go in with a game plan and an exit plan, and even for my clients, and it's up to them to capsize on that, right? So, I mean, we can't be there all the time and hold their hands. So it's like, mentally, you better be ready. You got to get your mental game on, because as soon as you exit that stage, if you don't have any shows planned again, say back to back or something, how are you going to react? You know what I mean? Are you going to be super disappointed because you did not place the way you thought you were going to place? And then how are you going to react off of that? You're going to go binge eat and drink your feelings away? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, you got to have your big girl pants on, and you got to bring your mental game, because, you know, only you can control that. I can't control that. So as many times as I've even gave exit plans to my clients, some of them power through and excel with it, and some of them just freaking crash, you know, and they keep saying they're doing well, but then all of a sudden they quit, and then come to find out, no, they had like a bulimic issue, or they had a binge eating problem or something, you know, and it's like, you weren't aware of it. So it's communication's key, you know, all the way around. So, but as far as me coming off of my last two shows, I think I aced it. I mean, we're all human, so you're going to have these days where you're going to eat what you want. You don't give a shit, you know, but it was more controllable. And, you know, I know what I want in the long run. So it's the name of the game. Not everybody's going to win. And so all you can do is focus on you and just bring your best, really. So that's all I focus on day in and day out, because I know if I slack, then it's my own fault if I lose, because I didn't do what I should have done.
Yeah, that's so true. And even with me, you know, training clients as well, it's been, you know, some of those conversations will go like, I'm doing everything that you told me to do, whatever, but pictures say otherwise, sometimes post-show, I should say. And so sometimes we have to get a little bit deeper into what's going on when it comes to things. But I will say a lot of times that we try to, especially for Stephanie and I with prep clients, we try to have that conversation before you even hit the stage. You know, like, what are your goals after the show? Whether or not you want to compete or not, that's fine. Like, if this is a bucket list item, sure. You know, let's plan for what we're going to do afterwards. But usually, regardless, you're going back to your maintenance, you know, balanced, healthier lifestyle, regardless of what your goal is. So we can have that conversation and just kind of like see what you can expect getting out of that. Because only your coach knows your plan going into it. So your coach should be able to get you back to your maintenance afterwards in terms of cardio and conditioning and all of that. So when it comes to getting yourself post-show and getting your mind right, you know, it's just like getting your mind right for the show, right? So a lot of the times, like during my first couple of shows, I listened to audiobooks all the time. I was listening to, like, during cardio and stuff, I was doing all the personal development because I was trying to get my mind focused and, like, you know, all that good stuff and working through those emotions then, because like I'd mentioned, I didn't have a lot of support. So I was working through a whole bunch of stuff. And then coming into competing for the first time, I was also dealing with not the best eating habits. So I was also trying to get out of that and trying to eat healthier and being mindful of what I was putting into my body. So, you know, there's a lot of work to get there, but there's also a lot of work afterwards. And so don't discredit yourself for getting there, but also just know that there is work getting out of it as well. And your coach is there for you. Don't try to just exit, done. I don't need a coach anymore. I would highly recommend, and anyone's going to tell you this, stay with your coach as long as you can, regardless if you plan on competing again or not. Your coach is going to help you to at least get back to your maintenance, live a healthier, balanced lifestyle, and then you can decide if you want to, you know, have other goals, continue to work with them, whatever it may be. Obviously, financial reasons come into that too, and we all understand that. But yes, that's a lot of post-show blues. Do you guys have anything else you want to share or any questions, Laura? I know you kind of hopped on after we got started. All right, no worries. If you do have a question, you can post that in the chat as well. But in terms of you, Stephanie, I want to say that I think you've done a great job after your last couple of shows. Like, yeah, you've had your moments and your days, I know, but, you know, like you said, it's the experience overall. It does get easier every single time because you know what to expect. So
Right.
after that first time, like, you don't know what to expect. You don't know how you're going to feel and how depleted you are, because the shorter your prep is too, the more extreme measures you had to take to get there usually. So you had a longer prep this last time. So you were able to gradually get into it and then get out of it. And it wasn't so intense getting there.
Yeah. I mean, there's pros and cons to a longer prep, you know, because longer prep means longer time of not having fun with, you know, other people are going out and doing your thing, or whatever it is. You know, I don't really care. I don't go out much. I don't hang out with people. It's easy for me. So, but no, it was easier for me. It was 9-month prep. And for some people, they're like, holy smokes, you don't need to be prepping for that long. But you know what? Everybody's different. And it was like a new approach for my coach and I. And so, because the last preps before that, it was probably about 4-month prep or whatever. And my body likes to hold on, you know, it likes to hold on to excess weight. And so instead of just keep stressing it out, it's like, well, we might as well just start slow and go from there. And I like that because we didn't even pick a show date up until probably like 3 months until a show that I wanted to do or whatever that I had in mind, but I wasn't even going to like aim for it because I wasn't sure where we were going with it, you know? But starting that early helped me, you know, be like 3 months out, be like, okay, I want to do this show, because we were right on track, you know, instead of just like, okay, I'm picking this show, so let's start prep this day, and then we're hitting it hard, no looking back, you know. So so far I like the longer preps for me personally, just because you don't have to be so stressed out all the time on if you're going to make your mark, you know?
Yeah, it definitely, I will say my biggest regret for the first one is that I just rushed it. I rushed it way too fast. I should have, one, I wasn't ready, but two, if I had taken and slowed it down and taken more time, it would have been less stressful. Because of course, if we're stressed out, that cortisol levels are raising too, which isn't helping you. It's counteracting what you're trying to do. But yeah, I personally like a little bit of a longer prep now, not like 3 months. I'm like, yeah, no, 3 weeks wouldn't do it. But, you know, a little bit longer than 3 months, you know, is kind of like a sweet spot for a lot of people. You know, it gives them plenty of time to mentally prepare, but also physically as well, and the conditioning that goes into that. Of course, that depends on your starting point. You know, talk to your coach or talk to a coach if you don't have one, and kind of figure out what a good timeline would be, because obviously everyone is different. And that's the last thing that I want to add, is that please do not compare yourself to everyone else when it comes to competing. Even when you're in the depths of it, you're going to want to look at everyone else and be like, oh, like we see the posts all the time, right? Oh, what weight were you at 12 weeks out? And I'm this height. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. The same thing with, you know, I see people like reselling their suits and stuff too. And they're like, oh, I was this stage weight and this height. That doesn't matter either. Because everyone is built differently. It's like, so please don't compare yourself when it comes to competing. Only you can improve off of what you've done, right? So after your first show, you're going to improve for the second one and know where to go from there and get judges' feedback in order to make those necessary improvements. But for a lot of people, when we're in the depths of it, we're always trying to figure out if we are on the right track. And that's really a conversation you need to have with a coach.
Yeah.
So I think that's all that I had. Did you guys have anything else you want to add? Anyone have questions? I know, Jess, you just hopped on. I am so sorry. We got through most of it. But if you do have any questions, you know, about body dysmorphia, you know, prep, whatever, feel free to ask us anything.
I got my time zones mixed up. So
oh no.
all of a sudden my phone was telling me that it was anyways, long story. I'm in Wisconsin and I'm totally messed up the time zone.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. I know things happen, and especially time zone differences. We can't always have everyone on the call because everyone's doing different things at different times. But yes, Laura, we are recording. So we will have the recording for you either way to be able to watch what we discuss. If you have any questions even afterwards, you can reach out to any of us. You know, me and Stephanie are both competition prep coaches. Holly is also a health and wellness coach. She is also on our team. And so any of us would be happy to talk to you. Are you in prep right now?
I actually am. I compete a week from tomorrow. I was in so I competed for the first time in October of last year. And I got way too lean for the show, way too lean. It wasn't a good experience with coaching. And so I've actually been growing into the show. So I'm like about 13 pounds heavier than I was in October, and in a good, like just totally controlled way. And before I get, you know, because I'm in the building season per se, but this show is actually pretty close to our hometown. So I'm like, you know what? I want experience. I loved being on stage. So I'm still pretty lean before I get too fluffy, I guess. You know, might as well try it one more time in a little bit of a redemption way. I should have trusted my gut the first time around. So so now I feel really good, and we're gonna give it a shot in a week.
That's exciting. Well, good luck. I'm happy to hear that. And I love that you are growing into it, kind of like it's a different experience, because not everyone just, wasn't lean enough per se. You, on the other hand, needed to grow a little bit, have a little bit more.
Yes, for sure. So,
well, awesome. Go ahead.
About this growth. Like, it's so refreshing to see somebody excited about growth, because
Mhm.
I think sometimes where everyone in the sport is, especially new people, are so focused on like the lean that they don't realize like growth is good, growth is positive. Like, if we're putting on those pounds and those pounds are muscle, yes, right, because it's going to make you more competitive. It's going to give that look that they're looking for. So I just thank you, Jess, for sharing that.
Yeah, I've had I feel like I look awful right now. I have no but so I'm from Wisconsin, and I have a whole history of disordered eating and bad behavior. And actually for me, which you guys probably have gone over this, so I feel kind of dumb.
You're fine.
Jumping on this call at the last second. I had a long history of up and down in weight, and finally I was very, very low weight. I was like about 80 pounds about 5 years ago. It was terrible, but actually I kind of made a deal with myself. I'm one of these overachievers. Like I go all in anything I do, and apparently the weight down was I went all in there too and got to 80 pounds. But anyways, long story short, I'm 40 with 2 kids, and I'm a nurse on hiatus while I raise my kids. And bodybuilding is actually what I guess saved me in many ways. Like, for some people, I know it can go the opposite way, and the dysmorphia, and I mean, granted, the dysmorphia, I don't know if it ever truly goes away for anybody in an aesthetic sport, but the tracking my my sleep and my macros, and like I became good friends with food through this sport. And that was just kind of like because you have to eat to fuel, you have to eat to recover, you have to eat to have energy, you have to eat to build effing muscle. And so that has been it's been a slow and just awesome. I really started taking control of my body during COVID in 2020, 2021. And then at the end of my build last year, I got up to about 100 and almost 140 pounds. And then my coach for prep, I was down to like 111 on stage. I was Skeletor. Like, I'm embarrassed. And so now this is kind of a little bit of a redemption time on stage. So I feel so much better, a little bit heavier, and my glutes are, everything is like with the food, and of course proper sleep and all that. Like, it's going so much better this time around.
Yay. I'm awesome. It's so great to hear that, like Holly was saying too, because normally we do hear about the other side of things, which we've already kind of covered, but you're kind of on the other side of the spectrum where you're like, I'm trying to build. I don't have the issue of losing, right?
No, I lean out pretty quick. I'm almost 5'8", and I'm like, my arms are super duper long. And so everything is very lanky on me, but so I lean out really quick, but building muscle is freaking hard. So I am proud of where I've come since October, and everything filling out. So it's been I've been following the Top Knot emails for quite some time, which is how I found out about this.
Oh, yay. Awesome. How did you come across us? Was it the First Time Competitors group?
Yes. And then I think I was Googling like competition checklist or something like that. And I came across it. So, so I've been getting your emails. I read them all.
Yay. Yes. Awesome. Well, I'm happy to hear that. Good luck at your show as well. I know I've already said that, but I can't wait to see. You'll have to share pictures with us. Can't wait to see it. But other than that, that was pretty much all that I had for today. If you guys have any questions afterwards, like I said, feel free to reach out to any of us. We're here to help you in any way that we can. This is recorded, so you can watch the beginning. Once I get it uploaded, it'll be uploaded to YouTube. So other than that, I will see you guys later.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And